Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Creative Endeavour podcast. I'm actually coming to you from my house here in Lawrence in New Zealand, and it just started snowing outside, so I'm itching to get out there and get some photographic reference. But before I do, I want to share with you this interview. Now, in this episode, I'm bringing you an interview with Jacob Butler, who's a young artist based in Fremantle in Western Australia. Now, I've actually known Jacob for a few years, and I find his personal story so inspiring. Jacob, like many people, received some negative feedback when he was very young, and this ultimately destroyed any future that he hoped to have with his creative passion. Fortunately, Jacob picked it up again later in life and found himself dominating within his niche, now making a really comfortable living selling his paintings full time. And this is the point of the Creative Endeavour, bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. I really enjoyed this conversation with Jacob, and I hope you will too. Without further ado, here's Jacob Butler. Jacob Butler, it is fantastic to finally have you on the podcast. Let's take people back a little bit, because you and I go back a little ways here. And I've known you and known of you for a few years. We first met at a workshop probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And that's when you first told me your story, and you were just kind of coming up then. But over the years, I've watched you kind of develop as an artist, and you've had a bit of an unusual track. Why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you up to this point where you're at now?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, because I can go on for a while. But
we want the long version, Jacob.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Well, I started off like probably yourself, just drawing everything that I could see. It was just my favourite thing to do. Especially, I was living in rural Western Australia, like in the goldfields and these little mining towns. Yeah, there was basically no TV, so we used to walk around the bush collecting things, and I always just used to have a pencil and paper, and I just draw everything that I saw. Kangaroos, emus. My he had a lot of mates with big trucks, so I used to draw them as they came in, and just really found it was like an escape, in hindsight, it was like a meditation, like it just made me feel good. And then I guess I did a couple of things when I was 4 years old, or I think when we moved to Kalgoorlie, some of the stuff used to get into the newspaper and the little sort of little sections in the school to say, well done with your art. But as I got older, I think we basically moved to Italy at the age of 12. At the age of 8. Art just sort of went out the window a bit.
Right.
It was just, I think ever since I was young, I wanted to be an artist, but I'd always have these situations where I'd always listen to people's feedback. And there was a couple of moments where I remember saying, or hearing, your son's a great artist. Is he going to be an artist when he grows up? But it was always, what sticks into my mind was there's no money in it. And, yeah, I think so, but there was just no point. There was always just something that sort of stopped me from breaking through. So it lost importance as I got older, and I got more interested in video games and movies, just crap. And then fast forward, basically, while I was in Italy, that's sort of when I used it as a bit of like a saving grace, because I was living in Italy in a classroom where everything was Italian, so I had to sort of communicate with people, or even really it was more about getting people to like me. And I knew that I had that special skill that I could draw, so I used to draw the teacher and draw students and stuff, and like pass them the piece of paper, and say, check it out. So it sort of made me feel like I had something special going. And then once again, sort of fast forward to move back to Australia, and I was in high school, and it became less important as I sort of had to start again in high school. Didn't know anybody, had to make friends again. And yeah, I think I had a teacher in year 9 where I was just self-taught the whole time, drawing pencils, recreating sort of like Michelangelo sculptures, and I liked the old Roman stuff.
Oh wow!
And
cool.
did this big drawing and handed it in to the teacher, who was a bit nutty, I thought. And she got lipstick and basically painted over this pencil drawing and said, "No, it's not current enough. You need to make it more contemporary." And that's sort of when I just threw in the towel. Like I just had a hissy fit and basically just.
Sorry,
stopped.
whoa. Hang on a second. How old were you at this point when you gave that drawing to her?
14.
You're 14 years old. You're proud of this drawing. You take it to your teacher. She draws on it with lipstick.
Yeah, she got lipstick and just sort of went, "No, you got to." It was just like it wasn't in her paradigm of what was good art, and it took me forever. People liked it, I liked it, and then it was just another crossroad where it was like, you're not good enough. Art's not the right answer. Go study something else. And then finally, the art teacher said, "No, wrong direction." So it was sort of like the nail in the coffin for me.
Yeah, wow.
And it was since that day, I think it was year 9, where I basically completely stopped it. Like it just, I think I did another drawing then about probably 10 years ago when I was working on a ship. But the thing is that I was really lost, for those years from I think like most people, when you go to school, you think that you know what you're going to be, but by the time year 12 comes around, you get the marks. And you still don't really, I just never had a correct pathway because I was always up in odds as to what to do. So I did all sorts of jobs. I was working on mine sites. I was working at bars and cafes. And I just sort of hit a dead end everywhere I went. And basically got to work on yachts where I thought I'd start a new career. Basically, I love traveling because I grew up in Italy, and started working on the superyacht industry for about 3 or 4 years. But that turned out, basically, I got the sack from the job and had to start over again. So like everywhere I went was a dead end.
Yeah.
I think while on board, I pulled out. I was reading Charles Bukowski, old poets and stuff. I was sort of always interested in people who's a bit like me, never found their way. And did a drawing of him. I think that was probably a drawing I picked up after 10 years. And once again, I was like, wow, this is really good. I love this. But I still didn't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
So after that, I thought, okay, now I'm 25 and I felt like I've wasted 10 years seeking and not finding anything. And I'm sort of rock bottom again because I'm living with my mum and have no job or prospect, even though I was happier because I had some great experiences. And I thought, well, maybe I'll start working in boats because that's where the money is. That's where the money is. To me, if it wasn't going to be art, then I'll just find something that pays well. One other thing I should say is that I did try architecture, and the only reason why I did architecture was because I got the marks for it, and because it was the only degree I thought that you could actually do drawing.
Yeah.
And one thing is my nickname's Shaky because my hands shake, especially sort of when I'm doing something or chatting to people or nervous or all the above.
Yeah.
And with architectural drawings, you have to be very fine with your lines. You have to, you know what I mean? Everything needs to be accurate, and that's something I was terrible at.
Yeah.
So the only reason why I did the architecture was to do art, and the university lecturer said that I need to go work my art skills. So I was like, right, no good for me then as well. It was just another kick in the guts.
Wow.
So that's sort of like how it led me into doing artwork. What happened was I started off, I didn't know where I was going to go, and then somebody said, why don't you get a job on the wharf? It's high paying, and it's sort of related to your industry. It's in boats. And I basically put a resume in one morning. The very next morning, this lady told me about it, and it turns out and it's no joke, I was the last person to put in this resume, and there was over 10,000 applicants for it, like all around Australia and New Zealand.
Wow.
And it was this job which was ridiculously high paid, and it was week on, week off. It was like a job that never happens. It was for the Gorgon project. And
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so highly paid, working sort of under Chevron, didn't need any skills. But I'd have all the time in the world to do whatever I wanted week on, week off. So I was like, wow, I've sort of just hit the jackpot after getting sacked. So things are looking up. And I got this job, and I was just in this like seeing with all these people who've been working their asses off to get a job like that, like riggers, people in mining industries, construction, big burly men from all backgrounds. There was people in gangs, there was people, ex-criminals, ex-football players. But it was awesome. It was all people that I just find really fascinated. Books I read about, I was like, man, this is awesome. But I just felt like I just did not belong here. I was there for a ride. So working the job, I think it was after a couple of months, I was like, now I'm getting paid really well and I'm just wasting money, like nothing. I was living this shadow of a person where I still had no direction and no purpose. And one day I was sitting on the work bus, and this guy goes, well, I think for some reason I just started picking up a pen and I was drawing one of the guys in the bus for the first time I've done it in ages, because it was raining, and when it rains in the wharf, you don't work.
Oh wow!
It's stop work. So I was sitting on this bus, and this guy goes, man, that's pretty good. Can you do a drawing for me on my helmet? And I think it was a boxer. The guy's like an ex-boxer, big dude, and I painted. I did a drawing of Mike Tyson with black marker.
Yep.
And he's like, man, that's really good, because he could put it on his hat, and all of a sudden everyone knew he was a boxer.
Yeah.
And then from there it went to this guy, because they're all sort of union. Somebody like Che Guevara, drew him. And then I got another request, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, this is great. I'm drawing, I'm enjoying it, I'm offering something to the world, and I'm getting better. And I always thought that using colour was really hard. That was probably a big fear, and why I didn't launch into art, because I was too scared to think, man, colour's hard, I can draw, but colour's just another world. But when I realised that if I could just change the boxing glove to a red, use a paint pen and fill that in, then really it's just drawing. You're just using a different colour, and it was easy. So pretty soon, that's all I used to do. I'd basically be known as the guy who paints helmets. And the people on the wharf loved it so much that they used to hire me in a bus or the van. And you get other guys in a van who drive around and drop these helmets off, and I'd just be sitting there. I basically set up a studio on the wharf.
Oh, wow.
And it was seriously mind-blowing. Like, people couldn't believe what was happening, that I was getting paid to draw. But at the end of the day, everybody wanted a helmet. So they didn't really care. So if I was under their crew, they'd put me in the van and I'd just draw helmets for them. And then I was like, wow, this is not only fun, it's hilarious, because now you've got all these big burly men, and everyone's got their pride in drawing their hat. Could have been their dog or their girlfriend or their wife or their footy team or whatever, but it was just like a sea of colour on the wharf.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So from there, I was like, one day I started getting to sketching because I got my confidence up. And started bit by bit getting all these new different pens and sort of like tools where I can create better pictures. And the actual boss of Patrick, which is the company I used to work for, and the other guy in charge basically walked into this area. It was the washdown bay, and I was sitting there basically with this kit. There was a couple of guys sort of guarding me because I was doing a drawing for him. And he's like, Shaky, what the hell are you doing? And and I was covered in paint. I had this scene and go, I'm drawing pictures, have a look. And I thought I was going to get the sack like right there. And he's like, check this out. He goes, oh, I want to see you in my office. And I was thinking, all right, that's it for me. I'll sort of push it too hard.
It was good while it lasted.
When I get to the office, he goes, you know what, that's really good. I actually want to commission you to do a calendar for the wharf. I want you to paint everyone in the wharf, and you can do it on the job. And I was like, man, now I've got a license to paint by the boss and also by the union who I was doing all this work for as well. And instead of doing a 12-page calendar, and you had about 9 months left, I turned it into a 120-page calendar. And I basically painted about 100 portraits and 110 helmets for the whole duration. So I just pushed it as far as I could. And it was awesome. Like all of a sudden my whole world opened up. Like I was happy. I was actually offering something, because I knew, like, I was falling asleep when I was actually doing actual proper wharf work. I remember dogging a crane, and there was this giant cement block, 100 kilos or something. It would have been 2 tons. And I was basically falling asleep as I was doing the dogging work. I was just never wired for it, but as soon as I drew and saw people's reactions, like my whole world changed. And I thought there and then, that's me. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. There was this guy called Bay Rigby, and his dad was Paul Rigby, and he was a world-famous cartoonist. And I used to hang out with him a bit prior to working on the wharf. And I just realised, like, I always thought that what he could do with his pencil, where you could summarise somebody or do a drawing really quick in so little lines, I actually thought it was like a form of magic. Because he'd be able to sort of summarise somebody or do something, either good or bad, and basically that was them on paper sort of manifested. I thought it was like magic. And then not only that, the power that he received through working for the newspapers, and basically he would have the ability to cause, to sway people's opinions politically or socially just based on what cartoons he did. And I thought there's just power to this as well, you know, like you have the power to shape the world if you put all your heart into it. So that was the first sort of feeling I thought when I was doing it in the wharf, where all of a sudden there's a sea of hats. I'm you know, it just, everything clicked for me. So once that job finished, I thought there's no way I could ever work another job in my life again apart from this. And I just sort of kept following the direction, kept going forward.
Wow. So, I mean, it ruined you, essentially. Because, I mean, I always thought that, you know, I said from the get-go, like, I was a serial fiery. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast or in any video, but I was fired from just about every job that I ever had. So I thought, you know, if I couldn't make this work, then, you know, then I'm done, you know. But it does. Once you start doing this, the thought of going back to having to work for somebody else, not that there's any shame in it, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just, once you've experienced that, you're engaged in your passion, and you're now deriving an income from it, you know, then that's the sort of thing that really, it invigorates you, you know, and you have this almost boundless energy. Not to say you don't get tired sometimes, but you always seem to be able to summon something to just go the extra mile. If you're doing something outside of your wheelhouse or outside of your values, then maybe not so much. But that's inspiring, man. That's inspiring, because when I think of you and I think of your work, because I'm following you on Instagram, been following you on for ages, ever since I got Instagram, and I'm watching some of these more recent posts, maybe over the last couple of years, of what you're doing now. And that's going to take some energy. I want you to maybe tell people a little bit about what you do now, because I think it's one of the coolest ways of taking your talent and your passion and sharing it with people. Like, sometimes on the most momentous day of their lives or the most momentous occasion, and you're immortalizing this, but you're doing it live. Like, I don't want to give it away. Tell people, like, what that's all about.
Yeah, well, I guess when I was working in the wharf, I thought I'm going to paint helmets, and then it just sort of kept moving forward and kept evolving from big walls to I think what happened was, when I started painting, I thought I really, because I only started recently, like 6 years ago, I thought I'm so behind with all the other artists who have been practicing, and I want to pursue this. I want to be really good. So I thought I really got to throw myself in the deep end and just to force myself to sort of learn or do something a lot quicker and the hard route. So I think when I was painting on the wharf, it was always on the company time as well, and I was doing it in a van, and I only had about half an hour to do a drawing, so I was always doing under pressure with people watching me. And to me, you reach a zone where, when there's a time limit, you can sort of feel yourself in a zone where stuff is just coming out freely. It's not even really you thinking about it. It just becomes an automatic process. Yeah. And I guess 2 or 3 years later, after doing paintings for galas and things for charity events, we realized, I met my wife Anne, she's a wedding photographer, and her job is all about photographing people at weddings, but really capturing their day and the essence of the love. And we managed to get basically Anne was tasked with photographing a couple who were famous. Robbie Gray is a is a famous football player. He's a legend of a guy, but the job was in Melbourne. He was marrying Annabelle. It's really, they're a beautiful couple. And I was just fresh off the wharf, and we basically thought, no, we've got to get the big guns there. So we've got a wedding photographer in Melbourne to help out Ange, but we're thinking, well, how can I sort of be part of this process? So let's bring an easel to the wedding and see what happens. And basically, as Ange was photographing their day, I had a little pocket camera and decided to take a photo of them during the reception, during the ceremony. It was the first kiss. And I was like, man, that'd make a pretty good painting. So I had an easel and a canvas, and didn't even really think about what was going to happen or what was going to be painted. But I just knew there and then I probably could pull it off in about 3 or 4 hours. So I set up the easel and started painting. I had a time lapse ready, which helps with the pressure, which I think forced me to produce. And people just started coming in and gawking over it, just going, like, how did this all happen? And I go through my same method where it's the pressure that I feed off, the energy in the room. So I always have these big headphones on where I play sort of just music that's really energetic, and I basically get into this trance-like state where I can just paint to the beat. And I always figure if you could never actually think about anything and just do something on impulse or instinct, then it should be easy. And to me, it was easy because I just had this music to go with the flow, and basically painted them on their wedding day in front of everyone at the whole reception, and they just really loved it. And I didn't really know what, like, the gravity of it all that day either. I was just like, to me, it's just a big adrenaline rush. And when I'm finished, I just want to, grab a beer and relax because I'm spent after. It's like running a race. But Robbie put it on his Instagram, so did Annabelle. And then all of a sudden the next day it was, can you paint in Adelaide? Can you paint in Melbourne? Can you paint in Sydney? Can you paint Perth? Everybody wanted a wedding painting. It just happened overnight.
Wow.
And that's what I've been doing for the last year and a half. And it's just perfect. Like the whole setup is perfect. It's like I'm sort of designed for it because there's a huge amount of pressure, but I'm really fascinated in people. I always want to capture people. So why not better capturing people at their most, at their best, and also showing that love on their wedding day, and also having Ange beside me, getting the right photographs so we can actually put them in the right light and do it on the spot. It's something pretty special.
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. I love that thing as well. Like to be thrown in the mix with all of those people and all those prying eyes, like you're building yourself up, it sounds like, to be able to withstand any amount of pressure or criticism. But can you tell me, like, I know people have been, for the most part, positive, but how do you deal with criticism? Maybe even like the critic in your mind. This is a thing, and I'm always curious when I talk to other artists, right? Because we really we give ourselves a hard time. We let others give us a hard time as well, and we seem to wear this stuff. We take it personally when we say it to ourselves. We take it personally when we hear it from somebody, whether they're well-meaning or not, and it seems to affect us. Have you just shelved that altogether? Have you just put that completely out of your mind? Or if not, how do you deal with that?
Oh, I hear the craziest comments, when I'm painting. First of all, like I was saying, when I start the painting, I literally, like, the eyes roll back in the back of my head, and I have this music on it, and I sort of get into a trance-like state, and like nothing is around me. I feel people there, but I don't see them. Yeah. And I just know in my head that at the end of the day, it has to be done no matter what. I manifest in my own brain that this is going to be the result of the painting, and everyone's going to be happy. Yeah. So the thing is that I go through a roller coaster of a ride every single time I paint. It's like a mix between extreme fear and like extreme elation when I'm getting that ecstatic flow state. And I just sort of know in myself that I can pull it off, and there's a lot of times where it's just going so bad or the proportions out or it's too big. And then I think the only reason why I can do it fast as well is because I just try not to think about the mistakes. Like everything is a building block. So I'll use a big brush and if I stuffed it up, just start again. You know, I'm basically constantly starting again as I'm painting it. And then I'll use my headphones, and then sometimes I'll sort of pull them off, and I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, that's brilliant." And then other times it's like, "Yeah, I don't know about her," or I'll just hear these little comments, and it happens all the time, and I hear some crazy comments. So I'll just sort of use that as a bit of a gauge. You know, I'm like, "Okay, how's this bearing?" And I'll just sort of listen to something. All right, back to work. But I really take criticism bad, you know. So at the end of the day, I know that I can do a better job when I take it back to the studio. Although I try and finish it on the day, I just have to block it out.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like everything is a process. That's the hard part with the paintings, is that when you're mid-stroke building up a female portrait of a face, then I work from dark to light. Quite often they just look terrible because you're doing expression before, you know, with a squiggly line before their face emerges. Yeah. So I find it impossible to leave as I'm doing that. So I'll literally paint for 5 to 6 hours straight without moving sometimes, like hunched over. I've just got to do it. And I think the fact that people see how dedicated I am, they sort of just leave me alone. You know, they're like, well, you know, he's trying.
But look, you also, like, you don't just paint live people's, you know, weddings and also events and things. You do your fair share of studio painting as well, eh?
Yeah, that's right. That's the balance I'm trying to work out at the moment, because to me, when you do a portrait, really, if you're doing it right, it's a flow state, and it's sort of, you're taking in whatever vibration you see them at and you're reproducing it on canvas. So you're sort of filtering their person through yourself. So the tricky thing about a wedding is that you're always doing it based on that person. But I've got a hell of a lot of ideas that I want to do as well, where I can just pick something or a subject, and I want to do it big and large with that same style. I've just been so busy with weddings the last 2 years, where I've sort of got to give myself a bit of time and make sure that I can focus on that as well. Probably my favourite one I did recently was of Aboriginal elder, and it was just a photo that it was through a couple of photos that I took, but that I didn't take, that I saw, sorry, and it was just this sort of mystic. It was like a mystic. I called it Enter the Mystic, and I always think that, like, everyone's got a bit of magic inside them, and especially witch doctors and things like that, or mystical men, I'm really drawn to, and I really wanted to sort of capture that being without getting like a exact representation. So it was like through a flow state, and the end result was just him sort of looking at yourself. Like a mixture of abstract and semi-realism, like that. That's what I want to get to.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's like artwork that kind of occupies both those worlds, and it's hard to kind of tie down and pin down exactly what it is. I've seen that image because you posted that, haven't you, on your Instagram?
Yeah, and it was just it's a thing, you know. Like it took me 3 hours to do, but I can't do that. Basically, wow. I did it in and I can't really do that in one sitting if I'm in a studio with the lights and everything, and I'm all set up. It has to happen in that state, and it's just like I was saying, I think if you're in the right moment and you can do something that comes from within and you're not thinking about anything, then that's the free flow that I want to do more of. But I just think it's important for me to wait until I get my own photos of people and my own reference shots before I do any more. So that's the plan this year. Yeah,
cool. You know, it's interesting because finding that flow state, finding that place where the ideas start coming to you and you just feel, well, maybe not so much the ideas coming to you, but maybe more you feel that connection, that seamless connection with what you're engaged in. That's something that I've struggled with myself, on and off, over the years. And I have trouble working out what gets me into that state. And having looked at into personal development and things, and people like Tony Robbins, he always talks about controlling your state in order to become, most effective at what it is that you're doing, and getting yourself out of states as well. It's very handy for that. And I have trouble putting my finger on it for myself, to be honest. Sometimes I find that I'm in the zone and I'm able to paint for hours and hours and hours. Other days, I will still put in the hours and I'll still just grind it out, but I won't be in the zone. And it's like chewing on the painting. It's like, it's tough. You got to get through it, and it's just slowly just cranking along. Maybe I need to take a leaf from your book and start listening to some like fat beats or something in my in my earphones, instead of listening to conspiracy theory videos in the news.
Well, I mean, I do a bit the same. I listen to Joe Rogan podcast, and I sort of follow a series of self-help people or inspirational people like Jocko Willink and David Goggins, and I just find it just like I'm listening to it and I'm distracting, but I'm in autopilot, but not actually in the room.
Yeah.
But no, I have the same thing all the time as well, where I'll have a painting and I just want to touch it up, and all of a sudden I've spent 15 hours on it, and then I'm angry and I'll rub it out and start again. Whereas if I was in that mode, and if I sort of was one with the painting and I just need to do a couple of alterations, then you're right. So I think there's, I guess it depends, like when you're doing it, when the thoughts start coming and you feel like it's all easy and you're sort of creating on the go, that comes in waves, I find. And then I was chatting to this guy last year we followed this guy and his mate who trained up 5 camels, and they walked into the Canning Stock route. They walked the desert for 40 days. So that was a project we followed him around with. And he was a severe marathon runner. He's done everything.
Wow.
Marathon in Antarctica. And he was talking about the flow state as well. And he was saying it's like you need to have a certain amount of risk involved. So for me, it's everyone's watching, and a certain amount of immediacy, like you've got a timeline as well. And then some certain triggers. So like a music, I think, is a trigger for me, where it's like, okay, headset's on now, get to work. But like I said, I can't really turn it on at will. It's something that happens, and sometimes it doesn't, when I'm in the studio anyway.
You and I are very lucky. We're kind of in the same situation in a way, because I work very closely with my wife, Rachel, who is the brains behind the operation, really. Yeah. She helps me with the business side of things. She does keep me on track and keep me organized, and frees me up and allows me and opens this space up for me to just express myself and be creative and do the things that I really love to do. I mean, she's amazing. You've got something similar where you're working now with your wife, and you have been working for some time. And, she's a very talented photographer. I'm following her too on Instagram, love her work. How do you find that? I mean, how lucky are we to be able to work with our significant others? It's pretty cool.
Oh, no, for sure. And even finding her, to me, it was the ultimate, ultimate partner as well. She was a photographer running her own business. She was literally the first artist that I met who ran her own business, and survived as an artist. So I just thought, well, the more we can collaborate, and my ideal life would just be combining our two passions together and seeing how we can push that further. So especially expecting a child in July as well, it's just amazing to be able to actually have a team behind you, probably just like yourself and your wife, like you can travel the journey together. And that's what we do with weddings as well. We team up, and Ange does the photography and I do the artwork, and it's just like it's amazing to be able to sort of transition using two different mediums to sort of tell a story. And that's what we try and do, through all our endeavors, our trips, our exhibitions and so on. And what can I say? Just really lucky.
That's fantastic. It's amazing having that kind of collaboration as well with them. But, one of the things that I find, on a personal note, is that this idea of balance and getting a chance to switch off. I mean, I've talked about this before in the past, but I don't know about you, but I don't have balance. I don't know what that word means. I don't know where that exists. Like, it's not something that's on my radar. It's like, no, I wake up, I go to the studio, I work. You know, when it was at home, I'd just go into the studio and keep going. And she's kind of the same. You know, my Rachel's kind of the same. You know, she's very focused, and whenever we get time together, it's like doing something as well that is work related. So,
yeah,
you know, I don't know about, did you ever find balance? Do you this elusive thing?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I'm the worst at it because I always get told to switch off and I can't, you know, especially when you get, like yourself, you get emails at 3 a.m. from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm always chasing that next, I'm not chasing it, but I'm always waiting for that new excitement. So I can't help but be drawn to the phone or whatever. So what we do is there's certain things we do. Like, for example, I don't paint at home anymore. I paint at a studio. So then I can separate home from you know, being on the game. And we go to the Northcott gym every morning. So exercise and sport has just been a huge saving grace. I used to get into bodybuilding because that helped me with my confidence when I was younger. And I think not only that, it's like if you've got all this pent-up emotion or thoughts, just letting it out at the gym or running or whatever it may be is just a huge thing. So I do that every morning or, you know, when I can. And the other main thing as well is that we just always find time to do a big trip or a couple of trips a year.
Awesome.
So last year was we followed 2 guys who trained up 5 camels and they did a 40-day trek into the desert. So we thought it'd be a cool thing to just follow them with our photography so we can turn that to an exhibition down the track. This year is going to be the Kimberley. But from what I hear as well, it doesn't matter what you've got on. It's if you go out and do something with your partner or just do something separate, go out and on an expedition or to another country and do your own thing, then that's also where inspiration comes from as well. So we always make sure we have to do that, you know.
Having a big reset button and clicking that reset, and people have their ways of doing it. I mean, for some, it's television and movies and media, which I find personally a very destructive way to reset because I think it robs from you. And I'm not a big fan of getting into that sort of thing. And I even have to be careful about the type of music that I'm listening to as well. I'm listening now to a lot more kind of softer, you know, beats and like chill mixes and stuff that I find on YouTube, and I'm able to kind of ride out the hours that way. And then I have to listen to people talk as well. But watching stuff I have a huge problem with. So for me, a reset button, going out and being in nature is the biggest one for me. And artistically as well, I got to say, you know, because again, a lot of people are like, where do I find inspiration? Go for a walk. Get out of your house, get out of the studio, go to the nearest nature reserve you've got. Go for a walk. Find nature growing through a crack in the sidewalk if you live in a city. Find something, you know, because just having these moments and going to just hit that reset separated from your situation can really be beneficial.
Yeah, and it's hard to say as well because I always get told, Jake, you need a hobby. And it's like, well, not really. My hobby is painting is my life, and my hobby would be painting something that I wanted to paint, you know, like it always just comes down to that. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes you get so caught up, you need to refresh yourself, and it can sound weird, like it can sound like a hard thing to do. Why would I go for a walk in the park? So I find if you do it with someone, then that's the trigger for me. So join a club where you train with a bunch of people, then you swim in the morning. So I'll go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, and then by the time we wrap up at 6:30, I'll swim in the ocean, and it's just that zap of energy that sort of shocks you into place, you know, as to where you are.
Yeah.
But I don't think I could do that on my own. Like I'd have to find a partner to do it, whether it's a training buddy or you're joining a sport, or something like that. And then I guess one other thing we do is we always go down to the farm because I paint every day, like yourself. Going to even just shifting the environment. So we'll go down to the farmhouse, and it's so sort of, old school that you actually got to light a fire to have a bath. But even that whole act of like chopping wood to light the fire is awesome. Just shifting your environment out into, but like it's not the Stone Age, but back into simpler times is just great. You wake up, there's no electricity, and all of a sudden, things just become more real.
Can you tell me a little bit more about like some of these amazing experiences you've had, like in WA and even across Australia, that maybe you could share with people a little bit more? Because through what you do, and also through the collaboration with your wife Ange, you guys get to see some amazing places and have incredible experiences that then come back and filter into your art. So share with us some of these crazy outback adventures you've been having.
Yeah, no, we certainly do. And as I was mentioning before, we find our best art comes from real experiences, whether it's the people we meet that touch us and sort of change us internally. They've said something and it sticks with you, or the landscapes that we see. That's what we want to capture with our art. So Ange will photograph it and I'll paint, or vice, or we'll do a collaboration. So every year, I mean, we find the city is just like, it's like, it's work a lot of the time, but we just need in our souls to get out into the bush. And I think it also stems from actually living in the bush. I remember that I was stuck in a rut for a long time, and when Ange basically forced me to drive all the way up to Broome on a camping trip, I didn't want to go at all. I was just like, nothing could be worse than sitting in a car for two days straight in the heat. But as soon as we left the city and it was winter, and then as soon as it started becoming summer and the dirt started changing to like a red color, it was just same deal. Something changed in me, like a torch flickered, and it reminded me of maybe of my roots playing in the red dirt, and then all of a sudden, sort of nature just became the I guess we just became so grateful for what was around us. Like WA is such an amazing spot. The Kimberley, up north, Broome, Wyndham. So we thought, well, every year we've got to go camping, or we've got to go on a trip. So we made friends with these people at the Diggers Rest Station, which is in between Kununurra and Wyndham, and they're basically like a bunch of they've been around for about 30, 40 years, and they muster cattle, and they basically take people out in these horse treks. So every year we'd go out with the crew there and be their sort of photographers and artists in residence, and sort of follow them along and get all their footage and stuff for them, because obviously they sort of barely run on electricity, let alone know how to do all the marketing. So we fill that void for them, and it's just awesome, because if you're there to sort of document them, then they're there to show you the best spots. So to me that was living, just waking up in these anti-mosquito tents, and there's the Milky Way around you, and you're sort of like, you can hear the billy ball, there's horses in the background, you wake up at 4 a.m, the light hits you. That's what we live for. Commoners from the city, you just become totally helpless in the desert out there, and you see these Aboriginal Australians just walking around like totally immersed in nature. It's like they totally become, it's hard to explain, like they're just, they're so sure of themselves, and they also travel from over east to sort of break in the horses, and we're told that they have like a sixth sense when it comes to horses, like they're the best men there for the job.
Wow.
And just listening to them talk, the way they talk slowly, it's like you can feel their energy, people of the land, and it rubs off on you.
Yeah.
So they're some of the most memorable things, is meeting people like that.
I spent a bit of time up in the Kimberley, like yourself, and up in the far north of WA, and had the great fortune of spending some time with a particular, clan, and got to hang out with a law boss as well. Yeah. And hearing him talk about the land and the country, it wasn't so much that he knew the names of all these plants, but it was almost as if he was talking about plants, just things on an individual basis. It's like, no, this tree, not this species of tree, because we're very good with labels and names and classifications and separating everything. But to
Yeah.
him, it was like reading, feeling, and total immersion and total connection, where he was part of that landscape, and the landscape was part. There was no separation whatsoever, and it was a really eye opening experience for myself. You get around people like that, and you realize that they see nature and they see the environment as something completely different, and each other as well, and it's something I think we could use more of. I definitely, in most countries today, I think we could definitely use a little bit more of that connection that they show and they display. Yeah, it was just awesome. But and also just going back to what you're saying about as you're going up out of Broome, I loved that, where you'd see the soil change. I don't think people would actually appreciate just how red the earth is up there. I mean, it's more red than that door behind you. And if people are watching the video of this on YouTube, or, Jacob sitting in his house in Fremantle, and just behind you, there's this red door. And the color of the soil is like literally like blood red, isn't it?
Oh no, it's amazing. And then just and it changes color. Like you see colors you never really see in the city. Well, you don't see it anywhere in the world. Some places.
Yeah.
And then just how it changes, from red to blue to purple, the rock formations and everything. It's like you're seeing nature for the first time up there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I first started seeing your paintings, and that's where, at the time, I was working on helmets, and I was like, no, this is where I want to be. I want to get to your level.
I'll
So that
stop.
was the first. That was that's when I first saw you paint, and that's what I've always planned on doing, is capturing that, because it was such a life-changing experience for me. That trip, I actually ended up proposing to Ange on the trip after that whole experience. Now we're married, we've got a kid on the way.
Congratulations.
I want
It's
to.
awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, I just want to. I think that's important to actually somehow, is to sort of tell that story, how important that is through your art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Any means possible, through a painting or a drawing, or
Yeah.
I think that's always been the mission.
Yeah. It's art's one of these things, I said, to my students when I first started teaching workshops, like the one you came to, I was always had the feeling, this really strong feeling, that art was about relationships. There were two really vital relationships. The first one was your connection with the artwork, which was always drawing upon a space or a place or an interaction, which then was informed by another relationship, your relationship to subject, now your relationship to this thing you're creating. And then when you give birth to this piece of art, now there's another relationship again between your viewer and that artwork, in which you're hands off, nothing to do with that at all. It's up to your work, and it's up to them if there's going to be something happening there, if they're going to respond or not. And it's hearing you talk about this, I'm kind of reminded a little bit myself of my experience in the Australian wilderness. I have a similar kind of feeling here in New Zealand, with the New Zealand landscape. It's like getting punched in a good way. It just hits you, and as soon as you see it, it's like an artist kind of locks onto that, bites hold of that subject matter, and just goes, I just have to say something about this. I just have to share this. I just have to, and a photo won't do. And maybe a video wouldn't do, or flying a drone over it just doesn't do. Painting it is the only thing, making your brush physically go across every nuance of that landscape or that portrait. That's the only thing that really seems to capture it for me personally, anyway. And, that's a really important relationship there with that part of the process. And then hopefully people, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but hopefully people kind of respond to it. But look, I have...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I have something else I wanted to ask you about, because we also have done something quite recently for you and me, and over the years, had the great privilege, the great fortune of being able to paint on board an extraordinary vessel. Do you mind talking to us a little bit about that and your recent stint aboard North Star Cruises, the True North?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was always a dream of mine when I got sacked off the yachting industry in Europe. I was like, I was getting a bit. I was basically just a glorified cleaner as a deckhand, and I was thinking, one day I'm gonna be a guest on a boat like this, where I can have the luxury to be a guest on this, this amazing vessel that's going to take you places. And the first thing that was a dream come true. That I was like, well, now I wasn't even painting back then. Now I'm an artist. Now I get to do it. So I thought, wow, that's a spin out for starters.
Yeah.
But it's just going to be an amazing opportunity for us because it's True North Adventure Cruises. It's it's an adventure boat. So it's about actually taking people to those places that we just discussed that we want to show people through our art, but actually giving them that experience. So hopefully, the Kimberley or the WA rubs off on people as well, the countryside.
Yeah.
And we basically have the opportunity in March to go on a trip as guests to the Kimberley waterfalls, which I think it must be similar to what you've done because I've got the King George waterfalls in my sights. That's going to be my big painting, and
awesome.
It's just amazing because I've only ever seen it through your artwork and a few photos that I looked at. So.
Oh wow! You haven't been on board yet. You're due to go on board soon. Maybe I misread that.
Yeah, no. So basically, that's going to be the big thing for us, for Ange and I. It'll be artist in resident on the True North. But in the meantime, to sort of get acquainted with the boat and start doing a series of work, I've just spent time on the vessel in Sydney and Adelaide and Perth, basically as an artist in resident, doing paintings of the Kimberley scenes for all the guests on board as they had functions. And same deal, man. I was just looking through thousands of photos, and I couldn't paint off anybody's photos. It had to be from the True North. I didn't want to take anyone's photos.
No.
And man, I was just getting itchy feet. I was like, I can't wait to get up there and do it myself.
Yeah.
It really is going to be a dream come true because we've explored the Kimberley, but on foot, caravan, horseback, but we've never actually seen it through, on a boat where you can access that land that nobody else can unless they have, the means to.
Yeah. By the time this goes out, you might already be on board the vessel.
Yeah.
Oh man, you're going to have the best time. That trip, I've done it twice now. That stays with you the rest of your life. You're never going to forget that. I mean, it is life changing, especially for your artwork. Because those landscapes. I mean, to give people an idea, Australia is a really old place. It feels old. It looks old geologically. It's one of the oldest parts of the world, and those landscapes have got this really beautiful, haunting kind of feel to them, where they're so pristine and so unique, and they feel at the same time there's this torment to them where they've faced the elements, that they have been exposed for millennia, and there's this great cultural history there as well where you could be going along through the bush and happen upon some cliffs and see some of the most extraordinary rock art that on the planet, and some of the oldest rock art on the planet as well. I mean, it's really historically significant. Some paintings that are upwards of like 50,000 years old or thereabouts, and looking at this stuff, I mean, that to me was art history, just looking at it going, whoa,
Yeah.
I'm excited for you, man. I think it's going to be incredible, absolutely incredible. Congratulations. But I want to go back because I love what you said, about working on the wharf, looking at this vessel or vessels like it and going, one day I'm going to be here as a guest, or I'm going to be here, not working on it, but doing something, I'm going to belong here. I love that.
Oh man, it was a funny, and another moment I had, and I think it was almost the same day where the wharf boss came up and he was about to fire me. I remember going, all I like doing is drawing and painting, drawing as a kid. And I hated working, like just doing jobs around the house, and what I did enjoy doing was spraying a hose, like spraying leaves around this hose. And I thought one day I want to get paid a stupid amount of money to spray a hose. That was my thought as an 8-year-old. And then fast forward to age 25, I'm in a wash bay and we have to spray trucks, and I was getting paid an obscene amount of money. And I was like, oh, that worked out. But at that point, I was just drawing people spraying the trucks, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you just know things, and you just think, well, you know, it's going to happen, and you got to do everything you can to make it happen.
If you had the opportunity to go back and you would say something, what would you tell Jacob Butler as a 12-year-old?
Oh, I'd say it. I'd say the same thing every day. Go easy on yourself, and just keep following your passion. Keep following your dream, because at the time it was my drawings weren't good enough, because otherwise people would have told me to be an artist, is what I thought, and there's no money in it, and you know, I just listen to other people. But I think if you're easy on yourself, then you give yourself the time to grow. But if you that internal dialogue in your head is just, if it stops you at every crossroad, then it's a really hard path, which is what I went through. Nobody really knows, you know, what your passion is but yourself. Like, people can think they know, but no one really knows but yourself. So you just got to really listen to yourself and be at ease with yourself. And if you've got a crazy dream, then you got to go for it. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's the oldest saying in the book, really. But yeah, I think I was just really hard on myself, and I still am, you know, with paintings and everything. But you know, you only live one life. You just got to just do what makes you happy.
Yeah. You know, some of my students will be listening to this. I love each and every one of them. I mean that. And I hope they don't take offense to what I'm about to say. But when I started teaching workshops back in Perth, you were the youngest that ever came to a workshop. Do you know that?
Yeah, no, I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I think I even said to you on the day, I was sitting outside, maybe having a coffee or something before I went in, and you're like, "Hey, I'm Jake," because I don't know, you know, people sign up, or people were calling or emailing in, they'd sign up for the workshop, and I didn't know who was who, and so when you introduce yourself, I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool, wow, welcome." You know, let's hang out for a bit, bro, because I'm about to go in there. You know,
but
the thing is, though, you know, this is the thing that strikes me about the way human beings do life, that I just find so confusing. And I get it, like it's different for everybody, and it's really hard for some people. It's a really difficult thing. And it's never easy. But one of the things that struck me is the people that were in my workshops were all, without a doubt, with only a couple of exceptions, they were all retired, or they were nearing, but they were much older in their life, and they'd either hit a life circumstance where they had some money to be able to dedicate to their art, or time, where they had you know, long, maybe fulfilling careers, you know, but now they had a chance to really do something. And the amount of comments even that I'm getting now from people on YouTube and emails from people going, "Hey, you know what? After so many years, I'm picking up the brushes again. I'm really inspired. I'm going to go for it." And hearing people as well in that classroom going, "No, now I'm going to be an artist because now I can give myself permission." Yeah. Did it ever strike you as odd as to why more people didn't just go for it? Didn't I mean, for me, I'm crazy. Like I must be like something I think was missing, because I had lots of people telling me, "You can't, you're going to starve, you're going to fail," all blah, 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 all of the usual stuff that we all hear, right? But my only response to that was, watch me. You know, just watch me. You know, whatever you think. Okay, whatever, watch me. You know, does it ever strike you as a bit strange as to why is that the case? Why aren't more people out there doing it?
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? I think even with Instagram, and everybody's fanatic about creating something new, the easiest path is to just pick up a camera. And people think it's such a foreign thing to be able to draw and paint, like it's just out of their paradigm. Like, I remember reading this a bit of a book, Drawing on the Left Side of the Brain. There was a study done, don't quote me on it, but it was like everybody's got the ability of, say, like a 9-year-old, because they draw in symbols, and it's only that person who actually spends like one extra week or whatever it is, a few extra days, and makes the transition from symbols into observation. And that's all it takes. It's like one little wire in your brain to learn, but people just don't like to. I think there's this preconceived notion that you have to be talented as well. Like you have to be born with it. But you can learn anyone can learn anything. I think that obsession is, helps along the way as well. But every comment I get when I paint is I can only draw stick figures.
Oh my goodness, all the time, dude.
Every time.
Yeah. No, for me, it's either I can only draw stick figures, or I couldn't even draw a stick figure, or my mom paints or my dad paints, but I didn't get any of that, those genes or whatever. And people feel like it is, a really foreign thing. But what you're saying about the brain, or that study, I remember that. Like it's been many years since I've looked at that book, but essentially all we have up here upstairs is a mess of neurons that are connected, and synapses are firing, and it's literally just building a new pathway in your brain and then strengthening those pathways. And what really fascinated me about teaching was learning how many different modes people had for finding their creativity or being able to express themselves. I'll never forget, there was an engineer in one of my classes, and he was right next to somebody who would have been a flower child of the 60s, and somebody who was very airy-fairy and just really, loose with her brushes and just wanted to express herself through her inner child. And it was very much like this. And the other guy, and very flamboyant with the brushwork and the color. I was like, okay, you go for it. You're having fun, no worries. But this other guy was like locking in, and he was really struggling with this thing, and I remember talking to him and just saying, what do you do? What do you do? What did you do? What do you do for? He said, oh, I'm an engineer. I was like, oh, well, if you're an engineer, then you're all about like universal laws and maths and rigid principles. And he's like, yeah, I kind of think like that, and this is going back a few years, but I just said, well, did you know there's only rigid laws and principles that are dictating painting? If I mix a precise amount of this with this, I'm going to get this. And that if I have my lines just here and here, it's going to converge on the horizon like this. And suddenly, it's like it clicked for him in that moment. But right. I think a big thing that would help a lot of people is just realizing, maybe being a little bit easier on themselves, like you say, go easy on yourself. Definitely, don't give yourself such a hard time. Try and work out that mode that you're creating within. And try and figure out how you can take what you're already built to do and expand on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that's a big thing I sort of struggle with at the moment. Well, I'm sort of getting there, but the last 3 years, I've painted murals and huge paintings, small paintings, oils, pastels, chalk, and what happens is you start to draw like the photo. And you'll reach a point where all of a sudden you've lost it and you've just done a reproduction. It may as well just be a photo. So the hard part, I think the important part is that you have to retain your own voice and your own style of painting. And a lot of people don't realize is that even what they think is a crappy little drawing, if they can do that crappy little style consistency, then that's awesome, because that's an original thought, an original pattern that no one else can reproduce, because it's actually, like everything was a sincere brushstroke. If you got a weird style of drawing, then you should pursue that, because you'll get really good and you'll be able to paint like a photo, but that's not really you'll sort of reach that end where you're like, hang on, now I've lost my style again. So you may as well just paint like you do from the get-go, and then just learn. I just find different styles or realism or whatnot, or using different mediums as like learning a new note on an instrument. All you're doing is playing a song, and if you can learn these different notes and play in a different way, that's fine. But the important thing is that you're doing your original style, like you're coming from within.
Look, do you mind? I want to get a little bit personal with you here, because there's a few people, and I think people get it. I mean, it's awesome hearing your story and how you started, but I want to know, I hope you don't mind me asking, a little bit more about how your business works. Because if there's one thing I get emailed about a lot, it's, how do I quit my lousy job and make a living doing something that I love? Now, I've got a particular way of doing it. Your way is different, and I love that. And for every artist out there, there seems to be a unique approach to making money as an artist. And hopefully after a while, we begin to shatter this belief, this limiting belief that artists are going to starve to death. Artists don't make any money. Artists shouldn't make any money. And just on that note as well, like I had people, and I still have people sometimes in the comment section, but I had people even at university. And if you're commercial, if you sell your work, if you're deriving an income from your creative passion, then it's not true creativity. It's not authentic expression, and therefore it's not valid as art. To me, that's just ridiculous. Because I'm happy. I'm fulfilled. I think I'm an artist. I don't give a stuff what anybody thinks. I'm just here doing my thing, sharing it with others. If they love it, great. If they don't, great, whatever. But, you're doing your dance your way, and you've got this approach. Tell me a little bit about how you make this work as a business, or, in just as little or as much detail as you want, because I'm just curious about, you're making money, and now you're full time. You don't have to go to the wharf anymore. You don't have to hose off a truck or draw on a helmet. I mean, even though that sounds like it's pretty cool, but you're doing something now that is something you're passionate about and you love.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Oh man, it's crazy, especially when I'm doing a painting. Like I'm doing a mural that's 20 meters long, and because the sun shines bright, I have to do it at 4 a.m. in the morning, 11 p.m. till 4 a.m. in the morning with a spotlight. That's the only time I can do it. Sometimes during the day I'll be there, and I'll get a passerby walk by as I'm finishing the mural and go, "Oh, so do you do this for free? Like, could you do my backyard?" There's this, and your brain just explodes. Yeah, for some reason people think that it's like it's the world's privilege to get their art, to give your art, which makes it hard pricing things. And I've always had a big issue with pricing things. So I started off asking other people what they thought it was worth. Well, people that I trusted, like Anne, for example, because she had a photography business. So I'll try and stay brief, but I started off with doing helmets, and I was doing them for free because I knew I was already getting paid on the wharf. And I thought that if I did enough helmets, people were going to start offering me money. So I started painting. I did one for a guy who was in a gang, and then I did one for the biggest football player, and then I did one for the biggest part of that crew and that crew. And I was doing them for all the sort of influential guys on the wharf, and it trickled down. Everyone wanted one all of a sudden, and I didn't have enough time to do them. So now all of a sudden my time's valuable. So somebody offered me $50. And I was like, all right, if you're giving it to me. And all of a sudden there was a price on the helmet. It became, after I realised that it takes 3 hours to paint a helmet, that there wasn't much point in doing it, but I still enjoyed it. When it came to doing a painting, to me it was just whatever I thought was what I'd pay for it. What would I pay for a painting like that? So I started off, because I'm hard on myself, I did them for quite cheap, but it just meant that I had a lot of work on. So as long as I was painting, I was happy. But then when it turned into now sort of need to make a living, I got asked to do a painting at a ball where there was all these people in the room, and it was to raise money for heart kids, for kids with congenital heart disease. And I did a painting, and somebody bought it for $2,400. And this was really early on. And I was thinking, wow, all of a sudden my time is sort of worth that. It didn't mean that I started charging $2,400, but it just meant that that I could have, but I wasn't comfortable doing that. So I still worked myself up to a level, and started doing, the first thing was an exhibition that I did. And after doing so many balls, some went for $5,500. The best painting I did recently was somebody bought it for $11,500, and it took me 3 hours. So once again, you're just like, wow, in the right moment and the right people are going to spend a lot of money. Wow. So then it just, that money went to telethon, by the way, but when people start to actually pay you for what you think you're worth, then all of a sudden your work is better, and you start to get the confidence behind you because you're like, well, yeah. That's right. And you finally caught on. Now I'm going to push myself to another level and another level. So yeah, it didn't take me long to realize that I should actually start charging, what I'm worth. And when I started, so I did quite a lot of commissions, but really I was working on my own stuff, and I still am. I've still got about 60 or 70 paintings in there as practice pieces that I'm not really, I don't think are ready to be released. But when this wedding business came about, it was the same thing with the helmets. I just thought, well, I just really want people to hire me because it's fun for me. I know it's something new, but I don't think it's going to catch on unless a lot of people do it. Then I've got enough photos, and I started doing it for $1,000 because I was like, man, that's $1,000, for a day. And I know that with wedding photography, people are charging up to 10 grand for a day, even though it's just a different market. Yeah. So all of a sudden I was inundated and flying around. I flew to New Zealand and did one, but it was great and enjoying myself. But then I sort of thought, well, hang on, no, I sort of need to keep putting the price up. And that's sort of what I've been doing ever since. Every 6 months I put the price up. Yeah. I'm at the stage now where I've got way too much work. I was always explaining, I paint 24/7. I can't remember last time I had a day off. So I need to find that balance again. But now I know that really it's your time is your greatest asset. Because I'm turning down huge painting, well, not turning down, but putting on hold these massive opportunities because I need to finish other work first. Yeah. So it was just, I created my own little, my own little timeline of where I wanted to be and just slowly increased the price. And then you realize, well, people are not going to, every time I put the price up, people go for it. So I just thought I never wanted to turn this into a business. Where it was all about money. I'd rather do the painting first and then sort of grow as my value went up and just did it. Of course. I remember doing the helmets. Everyone was going, nah, you should charge $100, charge $150. Yeah. Thinking, no, that's not the point. Like, I'm enjoying myself if I'm doing this on my own terms and there's no restrictions, they take it or leave it. And then I can get the work out there. But following that model, I don't have a problem with money at the moment. I've got endless commissions and stuff to do, but I think it was just the way I developed. It was never trying to be selfish and pocket cash. It was more about watching my art develop as my value went up and just kept that integrity.
Do you know what it is for me? My first goal when I started out was let me just make enough income so that I could keep the gig going. Just as long as possible. Let me just keep painting. Because anything that, if I'm like, damn it, I got to go and get a job, then suddenly that just broke the flow. And now I'm in a place where it's not working. The plan's not working. So as long as I can just keep this thing going, that was my first goal. And now, as I'm kind of developing my business here in New Zealand and, building my client list and commissions here, most of that goes just straight back into the business, and I keep going from there. But I have this joke with my wife because I work 7 days, and I remember I when I was talking to Cesar Santos as well, like that guy works every day. I'm one of these guys that works every day, and I realized as well, like even if you're not working necessarily at the easel, I got my camera right here, or I'm going to see somebody and it's going to be art related, or I'm going to be immersed in the landscape where I'm going to have the next idea. I'm always up here working, and you just can't switch off. But that's the life of an artist. And I think, valuing yourself in that way by saying, no, this is what I'm worth. Suddenly it all comes back in towards you. It's like the universe saying, I hope people don't mind me saying that because like, Andrew, you're such a hippie. No, but it's like life. It's the universe telling you, hey, Jacob, you know what? Good job, brother. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. We want more of you. Keep going. And for me as well, like it's enormously validating. Absolutely. I think, and I think really, this is what we're here for. I really believe that no human life is wasted. And those passions and those dreams, those things that we express as children, because I believe that there's a certain point where deep down what you really want to do. And the people that I found by and large that say, oh, I don't know what I'd really love. They're afraid to say what they would really love to do because it's just ridiculous. But find examples, man, of people that are out there doing it. And this is my vision for the podcast, is to find as many examples as I can of people that are out there doing it, so that more and more of the next generation coming up, and even people who are retired as well, can go, I can do it. I can do it. They can do it. I can do it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. You're an inspiration, man. But hey, look, let's but before we run out of time here, I want to get to one last thing that we were talking about before we started the call. Another opportunity that you had come up recently. I wondered maybe if you could tell me about your experience, because you went in to a maximum security prison to give a painting workshop.
Yeah, that's it.
Tell me about that.
So I guess quickly, when I finished the wharf job, I thought straight away, I got offered this job working with people with disabilities who have been abused or were just so incapacitated or in a wheelchair or whatever it was, like really suffering people. And I could connect with them a whole lot better than most people, I think, for starters, because they looked at me like I was weird, because when I'm explaining things to people, my hands shake. So they're like, oh, something's wrong with you. And my name was shaking. My thing is about just embracing it. If people know that if you've got something up with you, then let it out and enjoy it. It's funny. For me it was, or for me it is. And I started doing workshops where the whole idea was to just get people to paint. And I'd sort of set out the drawing and then just give them the right tools. Like if somebody had, this one person had a birth defect. He only had 2 fingers, so he could only pick up a brush like that. And I was thinking, well, if I can put the brush in there, and if he can just do that upward action, then all of a sudden he's painting trees with a roller. So I was sort of using them as almost sort of like orchestrating a painting, and you could just see their faces light up, just like as I would do when I learnt that I could paint. To me, it was just. It changed my life, because I think people underestimate how much confidence it can give you as a person, because all of a sudden you can do something that other people can't, but you're actually creating something, so you're proud of what you're doing every day, and you're sort of looking for that next adventure. So my mission was to impart that onto these people who didn't have much because they're disabled, and I've been doing that since I started about 5 years ago. And then and there was huge results, like people who would barely talk because they'd been abused and had, someone has cerebral palsy, and they're not very mobile, but you give them, or you walk them through a painting and you get them to do something, then it just gives them a reason to wake up, and feel happy because they're excited about creating. So when I got this offer to work at the prison, I thought, well, I don't want to know what they're in for. I know it's bad because it's maximum security, but I think painting's for everyone. And if I could inspire a prisoner to sort of pursue artwork, if that's what they're interested in because they signed up, then I could potentially change their life as well. So it was funny, because when you go to the prison, they say that you do this big, they put you through this room, like an induction process, and they say it's all about grooming. All the prisoners do is they want to manipulate you because they got nothing else to do. They sort of walk up and down a yard and they think about how they can control people, and they'll try and get you to do something for them. So they said, don't talk about yourself at all. Don't talk about your history, and don't touch them, because they said, they're not fussy. They might take an attraction to you as well. So the first day, I did a presentation and told them everything about myself and shook every one of their hands. I like I grew a bit of facial hair as well. I grew like a bit of like I had my old wolf beard back, and sort of I just wanted to be like them, like one of the boys like them, and yeah, just on my first presentation after my presentation while I was teaching him how to paint, my hands were shaking, paint was flicking everywhere. Some guy picked up a paintbrush halfway through. He's like, here you go, Shaky, like, because I was dropping things. Like, they were literally getting up and helping me do the whole process.
Wow.
And this guy got so excited, this guy, Henry, he was like, he really liked my artwork because I did this picture of Nicky Winmar, who's a AFL footy player, and it was basically this famous scene where he was showing the colour of his skin. And he's like, I really love your art. And I go, why is that? And he goes, oh, because Nicky Winmar's my cousin. And I was like, oh, right, okay. So he, through the next day, he barged through the door while I was giving presentation. And he's like, hey, Shane, he got some lasagna for you. And he basically cooked me up some lasagna and gave it to me. So I was eating it while I was giving the presentation. Like, it was just amazing to see how much they just, like, how important art was to them,
Yeah.
It was like an 8-year-old giving an apple to a teacher, but it was in lasagna. And the thing was, what I noticed is that they, for starters, they just asked me the same question, like, do you think I'm good? Really? Do you think I can do it? Really? And it was like nobody had ever told them they're in there for a bad reason, but I imagine a lot of it's upbringing. And it's like nobody had ever told them that they were good.
Yeah.
That they could. And I thought my whole purpose was to just say, give it a go, because, it can change your life. It can give you a reason to get up, to sort of self-improve and really pursue something. Yeah. And a lot of them did. A lot of them actually do university art degrees in there. And when they're on the outside, they can start, become painters. Yeah. Some of the guys were in there because they are into tattooing, and they tattoo each other in prison. So I was giving them like valuable skills, and they're like, they can make money out of it. So whatever it was, there's, I thought, people like that do need the influence of art in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's extraordinary. I mean, giving, all judgments aside, giving somebody that opportunity to express their creativity, that's really important for human beings, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What an incredible experience.
Yeah, and then I got offered a tutor job to go back, but I don't have enough time. I'd probably go in for different workshops, but yeah, it was funny. I was teaching these two guys. They came in late, and I was teaching them how to do my thing, and this guy's looking at me, and he's got a tattoo on his face. I don't know what it said, rat's tail, and he's like, "You're really shaking, eh, boy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, my name's Shaky. People think I'm disabled," and like everyone just started cracking up. Like it was just so funny. Like just that whole thing as well. If I didn't address my tremor as well, and if I could just level with them, then it could have gone the wrong way. But it was all just being open. I think it's just in painting and learning like that environment. It's just an honest thing, and everyone's on the same terms.
So you've had that tremor since birth, since dot. Do you think that embracing that, how has that affected your art? Like by just going with it, by just owning this thing and saying, yeah, g'day, my name's Shaky. Like by just owning it, has that had some flow-on effect with your art career?
Oh yeah, big time, because it's not so much that, it goes on and off. So it's not so much that I can't paint as fine as people, like it takes a bit longer, but it was just the whole act of never worrying about if I'm making a mistake. Yeah. So when I paint, I don't use a grid line and I just do it by eye, and the more wrong strokes I make, the more I can zero into the right area, if you know what I mean. So as loose as possible. And if your hands are shaking, or if you've got that nervous energy, and if you can get it out there, then you can basically go with that flow. And I always tell people, just don't worry about your mistakes. That's what painting's for. You go over it. It's a building game. It's not a rubbing out game.
Yeah, for sure. Look, this has been really inspiring, Jacob. This has been fantastic. Look, maybe before we wrap things up, is there anything you want to kind of leave with people, anybody who's up and coming, maybe listening to this, any message that you have for them?
I didn't really think of that, but I think what I just try and what happened to me was just when you really do take that step and go, no, this is what I want to do, like your life will open up. And as you mentioned, the universe does provide. Like the first day, I swear to God, the first day I decided I want to be an artist, the first day I was sacked on site and I was at the new house, I looked up on Gumtree and I thought, I want to get a paint kit. And I found this specific, it was these pit pens that I was using to sketch, and nobody sells 300 pit pens. You buy them individually, and this guy was selling 300 pit pens per daughter. And I was like, that's weird. So I called the guy up and he goes, yeah, they're actually my partners who just passed away. He's got a whole studio and you can take it all if you want. And he basically wanted to give it to me. I went there and I filled up the whole table with everything in everything I ever wanted, oil paints, brushes, like there was this weird projector thing, drafting thing, everything you can name, like you wouldn't believe it. And I said, is $1,000 all right? No, he offered $1,000. And I was like, yep. And it was that was the first day. And I was like, it's a shoot thing. There's no looking back. And that will happen. You just got to look for the signs, like you got to follow your intuition and just have faith in yourself, because there's only one way, and the universe will provide it.
Well, tell people out there where they can find you, your Instagram, website if you got it, Facebook, all that good stuff.
If you go on Facebook, go and look up shaky.com.au, and then on Instagram, it's at shakyjakey11. Right. And then my website's www.shaky.com.au. And follow me there. I'm always about 3 months behind what I post because I want to paint first before I post. But I've got a really exciting year ahead. And based on this Kimberley trip on the True North, that's when that's the time to really start producing my original artworks, and it'll turn into an exhibition. So make sure you get in contact to check it out.
Fantastic. I, for one, really look forward to seeing more of your work. I'm really excited to see where you go over the next few years. You've got a level of energy and enthusiasm and passion that is just about unmatched. I mean, I can hear it, and I'm just really excited for you, mate. So thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Oh, no, thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Now, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Creative Endeavour podcast, and a big thank you to Jacob Butler for joining me. I've included a couple of links to his work so you can check out more of what he does by clicking those links in the description down below. I've provided a link to his website as well as his Instagram page. Now, if you liked this episode and you want to see more podcasts just like this one, then make sure you click that like button and leave me a comment down below. If you want to see some of my painting videos, then make sure you're subscribed to this channel. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, but most important, make sure you're subscribed through my website at andrewtischler.com. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'll see you again soon.